I'm Anna and this is Awkwardly Yours, and today I'm going to make pumpkin sourdough bread. Let's get into it. So first I add in flour, and then the fed sourdough starter. Then I add in some water, and finally equal parts sugar and salt. Then I add in homemade pumpkin pie spice with cinnamon, nutmeg, and ginger. Then, since we don't have pumpkin puree, I mash up some pumpkins and add them into the batter, stirring until a shaggy dough forms. Should look about like that. Then I cover it.
1 hour later.
We're gonna improvise. So we're going to put, this is really moist, as you can probably see, the texture is really moist, probably because of the pumpkin, because we didn't have puree. Again, we live in Italy, so there's no puree, or really canned goods much, so we kind of have to make our own. So it's too moist, so I'm gonna add flour. I don't know if this will work. Sometimes adding too much flour is not a good thing, but we shall see.
Ma prima ce l'hai messa la farina? No?
Sì, ovviamente. Yeah, I had flour before, obviously, along with the sourdough starter and water and sugar and salt, but then I added in the pumpkin and the pumpkin made it too moist, so now it's like really sticky. It's better, but not enough, so... One of the problems that I found with experimenting with bread is oftentimes you'll get the texture you think you need, but then you will have either kneaded it too much or you added too much flour, which might be what has happened here, but I'd rather have a good texture, hopefully. The recipe says to stretch and fold it 4 times, but I've clearly done that way more times. So instead of 30 minutes, I'm gonna wait another hour.
Sembra che sta venendo bene, eh?
Yeah, it looks like it's coming together, but you never know, really. Because then the outcome could be overstretched dough. But we are gonna relax overnight in the refrigerator, so hopefully that'll help. See, this is the problem with not having a puree, is you then have like whole ass pieces of, sorry, I swore, whole pieces of pumpkin. Hopefully it'll actually taste good, like pieces of pumpkin and bread, who knows. It'll be sourdough bread with pieces of pumpkin as opposed to pumpkin sourdough bread. There is pumpkin spice in here too, so hopefully it'll be pumpkin-y. Okay, now I have to wait another hour.
3 hours later.
Okay, so this has been fermenting for about 3 hours. It didn't rise as much as I want, but hopefully we'll see what happens. I'm not totally sure. But right now I am kneading it before I put it into this bowl with some flour and stick it in the fridge overnight. And so basically what I'm doing is I'm putting it at the top of my workspace, and then I'm pulling it down and then turning it. It makes it tighter and more uniform.
Bello.
And see, it makes it so that the bottom kind of comes together more.
Guarda quanto è tondo.
Yes, molto tondo. Okay. Then, flour this. And you want to put it good side down and pinch this closed if you can. I'm having a bit of trouble because if you can see, it's kind of separating in the sense that like it's a bit too much flour. But so I'm just taking the top part of it, which is a bit, this part right here, the sides, which is a bit stickier, and just going over that. so that it comes together like that. And now I'm going to cover it and stick it in the fridge overnight.
The next day.
Okay, so now I'm gonna put it onto this string thing that I made so that it ends up looking like a pumpkin. So look. Yeah, no, wait, that's not. You're supposed to put it good side down if it comes out. It's very flat, which I don't really like, but we will see what happens when it gets in the oven. Now that goes in for 20 minutes covered and then 20 minutes uncovered.
Many, many minutes later.
So I burned the bread, clearly, on both sides. And I think it was because a combination of maybe the temperature was too hot, but also I cooked it for too long. So it burned. I'm still gonna try it once it cools down, but it's not doing well. Doesn't look very good. And then I used the wrong string because it said to use food grade string, but I only had this, so I was like, oh, I'll just try it, and that didn't work either because I don't know if you could see, but see it's like all fuzzy because the string kind of melted into the bread because it's not food grade string. So see, it's like fuzzy. So that's not gonna taste good. I've decided that the next time I try this, I'm not gonna put as many strings because it doesn't really look very pumpkin-like when there's too many of them. And see here, you can see the string fuzz has stayed on the bread. So not everything works, but this is my first time, so it goes. Okay, so normally you're supposed to see how it's steaming. I don't know if you can see it, but normally you're supposed to wait until it's cold to cut it, but since this was already a failure, I figured why not just cut it. Like there's an undertone of pumpkin, but it's very sour because of the sourdough. It's okay. It's very dense, as you can see. There's one big hole pocket, which is good because that means there's some air, but most of it's pretty dense and kind of spongy, which isn't good. Obviously it's spongy because it's like you can see the smoke. But between success and failure, I'd say it's somewhere in between. I failed successfully. I'm going to cut up the pumpkin bread because the outside did not work out. So I'm gonna cut it up and I'm going to only use the inside and cut it up into croutons and then stick them in the oven so that they get crispy and make pumpkin bread croutons. This is what they look like. As you can see, they're very, very dense. They're almost impossible to squish. And I cut them roughly the same size. First, I'm going to put olive oil, salt, and some seasonings, maybe some pepper or some of this vegetable mix. In total, it took about 15 minutes, and I stirred every 5 minutes to make sure nothing was burning.
Later.
So they turned out really well. They're crunchy, which is good, and they taste great, and they have a kind of a small pumpkin-y aftertaste, and this is a really useful tip if you have bread that's either going to go stale or you're not going to use it, or like me, the outside is burned. You just use the insides to make croutons or breadcrumbs. This is my final product of the pumpkin sourdough croutons. I had some salad with croutons for my lunch, and it was pretty good. The pumpkin flavor was pretty lost after I made them into croutons. I'm not totally sure why, probably because it was just pieces of pumpkin as opposed to puree, so just beware if you do what I do and don't make it with puree. There might not be as much of a pumpkin-y flavor if you turn them into croutons, but they still taste good. So this is Anna and I'm awkwardly yours.